Oculus has announced the pre-order and price for the Rift VR unit, and quite a few people online are less than happy about it. Let's ramble in each other's general direction in the comments below, but first, my opinion. I'm Tarmack, and this is Feature Creep. Okay, so this story has been making the rounds, as have the multitude of responses from YouTubers and games media alike, and I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't at least talk about it. But first, I told you so. With that out of the way, Oculus pre-orders for the Rift went live on January 6th with a price tag of $599 USD. The units will start shipping in March, and before anyone starts bashing me for some of what I'll be saying here, I've already got my pre-order in. The pre-order package includes the base Rift headset, which has built-in headphones and mic, the sensor, which is for position tracking, an Xbox One controller, the Oculus remote, the game Lucky's Tale, a made-for-VR experience, and access to the Founders Pack for Eve Valkyrie. It's actually a fair amount of stuff, but even amid all of that, the internet was aflame because of the heavy price tag. Notably, it is missing the Oculus controllers, which are generally expected to cost $100 to $200, though Oculus hasn't commented on that just yet. $600 US is a lot of scratch, and you think it's bad for you Americans in the audience? Try being Canadian. Our toss-worthy dollar, because of this exceptional oil battle between US shale and Saudi Arabia, means that my pre-order, when it ships, is going to cost me 914 squid after shipping and currency conversion. And the Aussies? Holy hell. No, we don't actually call them squid in Canada, that's just me playing with England. Our dollars are called loonies, like as in the bird. No lie, look it up if you don't believe me. The point is that we're dealing with no small amount of money. You can get an NVIDIA GTX 980 Ti for that amount of cash, the current top-of-the-line graphics card, or a nice, shiny G-Sync monitor, or all of the Razer Chroma gear if you're that concerned with how much light is available at your desk with cash left over. And why are people upset? Well, that's primarily for two reasons. The first, as discussed, this isn't cheap, and announcing $599 US takes the Rift right out of the realm of affordable for quite a few people. Reason two is that Palmer Luckey set an expectation in an interview a while back saying that they had a ballpark estimate of $350 for the consumer version of the Rift, much like the dev kits were along the way. You'll note that $599 is nearly twice that price, so the ballpark was pretty big. Luckey has since apologized for that estimate, and you know, I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's a huge amount of money involved here, and he's doing very well for himself, as is Oculus and Facebook. They could have easily reset expectations a lot sooner than now, especially after seeing how many articles were written about the Rift ballpark price that he quoted. So, we have a situation where people feel misled, but not just that. The reason that the ire is so vicious right now is that people were misled into believing that they could afford it. The real anger is coming primarily from people who had become absolutely fervent fans of Oculus, even going as far as getting involved in what is essentially a console war between the Rift and the Vive. They got personally invested. Vive is supposed to be a, quote, premium VR experience, which says to most people expensive, so they rallied behind the Rift because they expected it to be affordable, and now they can't afford it. It's easy to see the justification of the fury. From there, we have HTC and Valve biding their time because they don't ship until hopefully sometime in April. They're going to wait to see if PlayStation VR reveals their price before HTC is essentially forced to. And guess what? Amazon had a listing pegging the PlayStation VR at $1,125 Canadian, or $800 US, which was rapidly pulled down a few days ago. This despite Sony saying that the device should come out in the realm of a normal console purchase for price. I don't want to give any credibility to it though, because it's incredibly common for retailers to guess on price and release dates in order to instigate pre-orders. But wow, think about that for a moment. If the HTC Vive is premium and priced accordingly, PSVR is in the $800 US range, that still makes the Oculus Rift the budget VR experience, at least assuming you don't count the Gear VR or Google Cardboard. Alright, that's the basic history that unfolded over the last week or so. It's soapbox time. For those of you who thought that Generation 1 VR was going to be affordable, I feel for you. Palmer made a huge mistake that a person in his position should not be making, and waited far, far too long to correct it. However, you are now feeling the same burn that those of us who are in the excessive enthusiast category feel all the time. I couldn't justify a GTX 980 Ti for my computer. I had to settle for a GTX 970, and even still, without spending anything on the case, keyboard, mouse, or monitors, of which I have 3 24-inch screens on my desk, Gnome Rig version 2 cost about $2,000 to build around the middle of last year. It will do VR, assuming that when they say you need a GTX 970, they don't mean that gets you the absolute minimum settings on everything just to get a playable frame rate. This is referred to as being an early adopter, and you'll hear a lot of people say that buying the Rift on day one is being an early adopter. Actually, it's not. Early adopters won't pick up the Rift for another 6 months or so. This is based on the diffusion process in economics. The people buying the Rift on day one and for the first few months are called innovators. Remember, this tech is totally new. This is not some mass market new console or anything along those lines like when the Xbox One or PS4 came out. This is precisely like buying the first 4K TV on the market. It is only the people who either have more disposable money than they know what to do with, or the absolutely obsessed, and it represents about 2.5% of the people that will ever buy into VR. You'll note, however, that knowing all of this doesn't make the concept of VR being a long ways out sting any less. We've been inundated by games media touting how amazing these rigs are. We've seen them at consumer conventions. We've had a taste through Cardboard or Gear VR. All of these things, combined with silly statements like in the ballpark of $350, are pieces that are somewhat exclusive to the game industry. And it sucks, don't get me wrong, but I've had my suspicions about what Palmer said right from the get-go. I don't believe that PlayStation VR will be in the price of a normal console either, and the Vive, I wouldn't be surprised if its manufacturer's suggested retail price is $999 US. But Cliffy B said that virtual reality is the next big thing in gaming. Well, that remains to be seen. If the innovator buy-in for VR isn't big enough, we'll never make it to the early adopter stage. There need to be enough games, and not that single-color panel Tron-looking nonsense that Sony was showing at their press conference. There need to be real, genuine, good VR games. And who's going to make them if only a few 100,000 people have VR rigs for the first 6 to 12 months? That's why EA Chief Financial Officer Blake Jorgensen said, and I quote, "We'll build software for various ones, but we'll really wait and see how big the market is going to be." If the Rift at $599 is the budget option, that market isn't going to be big or even moderate for a long time. And that's to say nothing of the plethora of other issues that VR has, the biggest of which is that the entire concept is predicated on immersion, which means disconnection from real life. When was the last time you or your friends willingly disconnected entirely from their social circle for more than an hour, not counting sleep? I haven't done it in years at this point. We'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out once the Vive and PSVR have release dates and prices. I suspect that the main reasons for the price issue are that Oculus got scared after seeing the Vive dev kits. I bet that they were originally, as in probably over a year ago, targeting a $400 to $450 launch, but after seeing what HTC had, they knew that they needed to up the specs to avoid negative comparison. That and how many gamers actually have a computer capable of VR. Computers that can do this are less than 1% of the 1.43 billion computers on the market per Gartner Tech Research Group. Playing with the Steam numbers shows around 6 million users with a GTX 970. But that's not good enough to ensure that they've got the RAM or processor required, nor multiple computers in one house, and it certainly doesn't mean 6 million people overtly willing to buy a VR rig. It seems to me that Oculus is playing the long game. They know that this is the innovator stage and that the market is tiny. There's no point in having low specs and a low price right now. They need to compete on quality because that's what makes or breaks VR from an experience standpoint. For the moment, though, I think that it's a good idea for gamers to temper your expectations. I don't think that we're going to see real affordable virtual reality until the third generation of headsets, and that's going to be several years down the road. On the plus side, the graphics cards that can handle it will be better and cheaper then, as well. Are you buying an Oculus Rift? Did the price surprise you or perhaps prevent you from getting in on the ground floor? Let's chat about it in the comments. Feature Creep is a regular show every week, and if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you're probably already subscribed or AFK. If not, you should resolve that issue. That's all I have to say. Tarmack out.